My name is Sam Anderson. I'm 29, a pastry chef living in Denver, Colorado. I share a cozy apartment near Cheeseman Park with my fiancé Mason, the man I've loved for 6 years. We're getting married this fall, and Mason, being the sweet tooth he is, insisted on having a cake that's as bold as our love. I smiled and promised him just that. I knew exactly where to go. Haven's Delight, the most prestigious bakery in the city. Their cakes had graced the mayor's wedding, the governor's Christmas gala, and more importantly, they'd been part of my childhood. 10 years ago, Rachel Haven, the bakery's owner, had made my 19th birthday cake a red velvet Garfield head because I was obsessed with that lasagna-loving orange cat. I still remember how she smiled at my mom handing over the box with a warm, "Happy birthday, kiddo." So when I walked into Haven's Delight, that crisp March morning design in hand, I didn't expect betrayal. I didn't expect cruelty. But I got both. I had carefully sketched out our wedding cake, 3 tiers of pure white trimmed with soft rainbow buttercream, topped with 2 grooms made of fondant holding hands and smiling gently. It was elegant, subtle, a celebration of love hours. Rachel stood behind the counter, same as always, silver hair neatly pinned up, wearing a beige knit dress and an apron, spotless as ever. She looked up at me, blinking behind her glasses. "Hi, Rachel," I greeted her, offering a soft smile. "You might not remember me, Sam Anderson. You made my birthday cake years ago. I was hoping to place an order." She took the paper from my hands. Her eyes scanned the design slowly. Her expression shifted, tense. Her lips pressed together and her gaze sharpened. "This is a wedding cake?" she asked flatly. For 2 men, I nodded, keeping my tone calm. "Yes, for Mason and me." Rachel took a step back from the counter. "I'm sorry, Sam. I can't accept this order. My personal beliefs don't allow me to support that kind of lifestyle." My heart dropped. "You do know," I said slowly, "that in Colorado, denying service to someone based on their sexual orientation can be considered discrimination." "I'm well aware," she said, locking eyes with me. "But freedom of religion is also protected." "I don't hate you, Sam, but I won't celebrate something that I believe is wrong." It wasn't yelling. It wasn't dramatic, but it cut deeper than anything she could have screamed. A spoon clattered behind me. A young woman had dropped her coffee. A married couple whispered to one another, and the wife shot Rachel a look of disgust before dragging her husband out the door. I just stood there, gripping the now wrinkled paper in my hand. I wanted to say something, anything, but my throat was closing. Eliza, Rachel's daughter, stood behind the register. She didn't say a word, but her eyes, they weren't cold. She looked like she was holding something in, like she wanted to speak but couldn't. I finally breathed. "Thank you for your honesty," I said, voice barely audible. "At least you didn't lie." I turned and walked out. I could feel their eyes on my back, some curious, others pitying. The moment I stepped outside, the cold March drizzle hit me like a slap. But even that wasn't as sharp as the heat rising in my chest. I stood by my car, fumbling for my keys with shaking hands. I dropped them 3 times. My face burned, not with embarrassment, but something else, fury. I didn't tell Mason what really happened. I said the bakery was fully booked. He shrugged, said there were plenty of others. He smiled and I smiled back, but I felt nothing. I tried to move on, but that night I called my mother. I told her everything. Not just Rachel's words, but how they felt like an eraser dragging across every good memory I'd had of that place. She went quiet, then said, "You don't deserve to be shamed for loving someone, and we're not letting this go." I didn't know what she meant, but a few days later, my sister Lily showed up at my apartment, laptop in hand, and a wicked gleam in her eye. "You don't have to do anything," she said. "Just trust me." I narrowed my eyes. "What are you planning?" She grinned. "Let's just say we're going to make sure Rachel gets a real taste of the thing she hates most." I didn't understand then, but I would soon. And I had no idea that Eliza, that quiet girl behind the counter, would end up being the key to everything. Things moved faster than I expected. Less than 2 weeks after Rachel refused to make our wedding cake, my family kicked into action, quiet, precise, and surgical. My mother, a seasoned financial strategist who once ran a mid-sized trust fund, led the charge. She didn't call it revenge. She called it a redistribution of power. I remember the night it all began. We were sitting in the living room. My dad, a business attorney who specializes in small to mid-market buyouts, laid out a flowchart across the coffee table. The flagship bakery is still under Rachel's name, he said in his lawyer voice. But the satellite branches, those are owned by a holding company, and that company's debt situation is vulnerable. Lily nodded, flipping open her laptop and projecting a map of Denver with glowing red dots representing all the Haven's Delight locations. If we gain majority shares through their holding company discreetly, we can control the entire chain without her even realizing who's pulling the strings. I gripped my mug of tea. Is that even legal? Dad chuckled. We're not breaking laws, Sam. We're investing. If Rachel didn't want outside ownership, she shouldn't have taken on leveraged debt. Mom looked at me, eyes soft but focused. You don't need to feel guilty. She chose to weaponize her beliefs in a state that protects your rights. All we're doing is leveling the field. Part of me still wanted to let it go. I'd lived through my share of discrimination in school, on the street, even in churches that preach love the sinner. I always thought the best revenge was simply living well. But this time it cut deeper. Because the cruelty came from someone I once admired. Someone who had made my childhood cake with smiling eyes and gentle hands. Now those same hands had refused to touch my love. 1 week later, Lily registered a new investment firm under the name Pine and Lavender Holdings, innocent enough to draw no suspicion. Through 2 shell corporations and a series of perfectly timed stock acquisitions, we began acquiring stakes in the holding company that owned Rachel's chain. Our family friend, a semi-retired lawyer turned business broker, acted as the front man. On paper, it looked like a group of health-conscious investors trying to expand into upscale food retail. Rachel didn't suspect a thing. Within 3 weeks, Pine and Lavender controlled 60% of the holding company. And through an old clause in her bakery's loan agreement, we triggered a restructuring vote that handed operational control of the entire chain to new partners. But we didn't fire Rachel. No, that would have been too obvious, too merciful. Instead, we proposed, and she agreed to expand the bakery's reach by becoming the official dessert sponsor of Denver Pride. It was a lucrative deal. She saw it as a way to bounce back from a few whispery cancellations and polish her image. But she didn't know the contract required every item to be handcrafted at her flagship bakery to maintain artisanal consistency. And she sure as hell didn't read the clause that said all slogans must reflect inclusive pride-themed messaging reviewed and approved by the client, namely us. Lily drafted the contract. Dad vetted the language. Mom played the role of executive investor in a new organic food company, completely fabricated, of course. Rachel met her only once and never recognized her. She signed. As she inked the deal, Lily leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Let's see how long she can say no to the love she claims not to hate when she has to pipe it in frosting." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I wasn't sure I wanted Rachel to suffer, but I damn well didn't want her walking away smug after turning my love into a sin in her shop. That night, lying next to Mason in bed, I couldn't sleep. He still didn't know what we were doing. Mason believed in kindness, in turning the other cheek. If he found out I was orchestrating a reverse-engineered, cake-based justice mission, he might not see it as strength but as bitterness. But I wasn't doing it just for me. I was doing it for every queer kid who'd ever stepped into a business hoping for cake and got served shame instead. I was doing it so the next Sam wouldn't have to lie to their fiancé and pretend the bakery was fully booked. The first order came in a week later. 120 cupcakes, rainbow frosted, each piped with the phrase, "Love wins." Rachel had no choice. She couldn't refuse. And for the first time in my life, I didn't walk away when someone tried to erase me. I watched, and I waited. I walked into Haven's Delight at 6:30 a.m. sharp. The front of the bakery was still dark, the shelves empty, the air thick with flour and silence. Rachel was already there in the kitchen alone. Her posture was stiff shoulders, tight beneath her spotless white apron. Her hair, as always, was pinned up into a tight silver bun, like she was bracing herself for war. On the prep table were rows of fresh cupcakes, just baked perfect swirls of vanilla buttercream sitting neatly on top. But they were blank, no slogans, no color, no love wins. I stepped into the kitchen, held out a printed card with the design instructions. "We need this on every single one," I said, my voice as neutral as sugar water. Rachel took the card in silence. She stared at the words like they might burst into flames in her hands. Then wordlessly, she picked up a piping bag. Her hands trembled. The first cupcake, she squeezed out the word love in bright pink. The icing twitched. Wynn's was slanted, smudged. She cursed under her breath. "That one's not legible," I said quietly. I stepped closer, resting a hand on the stainless steel counter. "It has to be read clearly from at least 3 feet away. That's in the branding guidelines." She didn't look up, just gritted her teeth and picked up the bag again. And then she did it again, and again, and again. For the next 40 minutes, she piped out "Love wins" in rainbow-colored icing 120 times each word, dragging itself out of her hands like a confession she didn't want to make. Her face was pale, her lips pinched. The kitchen was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the squish of icing on cupcakes. When she finally finished the last one, Rachel dropped the bag onto the counter and leaned on her hands. Her breathing was shallow, her knuckles white. I gave a nod. "They'll go out front at 9. Emily's setting up." Emily, a bubbly college freshman with dyed green hair, practically skipped into the kitchen. "These are gorgeous," she chirped, picking up a tray. "Today's Pride Day," writes Sam. "Every day's Pride Day in June." I smiled. Rachel didn't say a word. She stood frozen at the counter as Emily disappeared through the doors with trays of cupcakes, each one a bite-sized protest. And this was just day one. The next 3 weeks unfolded like a slow-burn performance piece. Each morning, Rachel arrived before sunrise. She kneaded dough. She whipped frostings. She piped slogans like, "Pride forever, love is love, trans rights are human rights." Each day, the words got longer, more defiant. I made sure of it. I never raised my voice. I never insulted her. I was quality control. I checked spacing. I flagged inconsistencies. I ensured color compliance. I walked through that kitchen like a silent overseer, and every now and then she would glance at me like she wanted to hurl the piping bag across the room or maybe at my chest. But she never said no. She couldn't. I was the contract. She was the employee now, and I watched her crumble one cupcake at a time. One morning I spotted Eliza behind the register, polishing the glass display. She'd started working the front more lately, filling in for her mother when Rachel claimed she needed to rest. I walked over. She picked up a cupcake, looked at the slogan. "Love is love," she read, half smiling. "My mom used to say, sugar and eggs can fix anything." "And now?" I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes tired but soft. "Now she thinks only God and fear can fix the world." I tilted my head. "What do you believe?" Eliza shrugged. "I think kindness might be the only ingredient that actually works." I didn't respond, but her words sat with me for the rest of the day like frosting that won't quite set. That night I stayed after closing. I stood in the empty kitchen staring at the gleaming steel counters and the racks of empty trays. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt hollow. I wasn't sure if I was dismantling a bigot or becoming one myself. Lily was thrilled. She bragged about how our cupcakes were trending on TikTok. One influencer called them retro tradition with radical icing. Orders poured in, media mentions, back orders. But all I could think about was the look on Rachel's face every time she squeezed out another slogan that contradicted everything she thought was holy. Was I correcting injustice or weaponizing it? On the 24th day, Rachel didn't show up. A junior employee said she was under medical evaluation. Panic attack, elevated heart rate, fatigue. But by that afternoon, she was back, pale eyes sunken, moving slowly, but with stiff dignity. She rolled up her sleeves and started kneading dough. "You don't have to work today," I told her gently. "The staff has it covered." She didn't look at me. "I'm not here for the contract. This is still my bakery." I froze. In that moment, I saw something in her I hadn't seen before. Not defiance, not righteousness, just pain. Not from me, not even from the contract, but from a world she no longer recognized. I walked away. I didn't know what to say, but that night, for the first time since all this started, a question followed me home. Was I punishing her or forcing her to live inside a symbol she never chose? I didn't have an answer. But the frost inside me, the righteous cold I'd used as armor for weeks, started to melt. And I felt the chill of something else, doubt. Rachel was absent for 3 days. No texts, no calls, just silence. At first, the bakery breathed easier without her. The air felt lighter. the kitchen moved faster. But by day 3, the silence became thick, almost unnerving. Eliza said her mother needed rest, that her doctor recommended minimizing emotional stressors. But what Rachel did next, no one could have seen that coming. That Friday, Lily forwarded me a link with no message, just a subject line. Brace yourself. It was a clip from Fox News, already racking up hundreds of thousands of views. There she was, Rachel, sitting on a couch in a studio, pale as linen, hands curled tightly around a mug of chamomile tea. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Baker speaks out, forced to bake against her faith." "I've been making cakes for this community for over 30 years, Rachel began, her voice trembling in a carefully measured cadence. "I've never turned away a soul. But now I'm being forced to write messages that betray everything I believe in. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I feel spiritually violated." The host leaned in, sympathetic. "Are you saying your religious freedom is being threatened?" Rachel nodded slowly. "I just want the right to believe in my God without being punished for it." I stared at the screen, too stunned to speak. It was brilliant, deceptive, manipulative, and absolutely masterful in the way it flipped the script. Not one outright lie, just carefully twisted truth, half-statements, omissions. She never mentioned the contract, the fact that she had signed voluntarily. She never said anything about the paycheck. The narrative wasn't about business anymore. It was about martyrdom. By Saturday, One Issue, Protect Religious Freedom, was trending nationwide. Alliance Defending Freedom, a powerful conservative legal group, issued a public statement supporting Rachel and offering legal aid in defense of constitutional liberties. A small but loud protest popped up outside Haven's Delight. Men in polos and women in long skirts held up signs reading, "God's law over man's law." Let her believe. I watched the whole thing unfold via live stream, and I wanted to scream. Eliza messaged me that night, 2:17 a.m. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know she would do this. I swear I didn't." I didn't reply. I stared at the ceiling until morning, numb and raw. The next day, I got an email request from a local reporter asking for an interview. The subject line was clear: Rachel Haven oppressed or oppressor. I didn't respond because I knew what would happen. The louder I spoke, the more they'd paint me as the angry gay man attacking a poor, trembling old woman who just wanted to love Jesus and frost cupcakes in peace. They didn't want truth. They wanted a villain, and Rachel had already cast me. Lily, of course, wanted to go nuclear. We have the contract, we have the signatures, we have time-stamped surveillance footage. We can take her apart in under an hour. She has tears, I said quietly, and a microphone. My mother, ever the tactician, asked the real question: do you want to win Sam, or do you want to be done? I didn't answer her either, because I wasn't sure anymore. I thought I had already won. I thought the rainbow cupcakes, the quiet justice, the shift in power, that was it. But now Rachel was a national symbol of faith under fire, and I was becoming the cautionary tale. That afternoon, Eliza called me. I didn't know, she said again, voice tight with emotion. She never told me. She just showed up on TV. I stayed silent. But then Eliza added, voice low and shaky, "I have something. Something you should hear. A recording. I made it a while ago. For my own protection." I sat up. What kind of recording? A fight. Between me and her. About you. About me. She exhaled hard. I didn't mean to weaponize it, but maybe now I don't have a choice. I hesitated. You don't have to do this. She didn't respond for a moment. Then she said something that made my heart twist. I've spent most of my life being afraid of what my mother might say. I'm done with that. That night she sent me a voice file. 4 minutes long. It took me nearly an hour to listen to it. Rachel's voice was unmistakable, furious, laced with contempt. You will not embarrass me in this town. You think being like that is normal? You think God is proud of you. You're disgusting. You and that thing you were sneaking around with. A crash, Eliza screaming back. You can't control who I love. Then silence. Breathless, shattered silence. I sat in my apartment staring out at the city, the lights flickering like the last breaths of something sacred and burning. I didn't know what to do with the recording, but I knew what it was. It was the truth. And if Rachel wanted a platform, I'd give her one. one big enough for the whole world to hear her unedited. I didn't sleep that night. I played the recording over and over again. Each time Rachel's words sliced deeper, the rage, the disgust, the seething, sanctimonious venom in her voice when she spat my name like it was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. But it wasn't just about me. What haunted me more was Eliza's voice shaking, but unbroken fighting through years of silence, to finally say, "You can't control who I love." The next morning I walked into the bakery before it opened. Eliza was at the front arranging scones in the display case. Her eyes were red but dry. Her face looked calmer than I expected. She saw me, stood up straight, and pulled her phone out of her apron pocket. "You can use it," she said. No hesitation. "The recording. I'm not hiding anymore." I blinked. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "If I don't speak, she gets to define both of us. And I'm tired of being edited out of her narrative." I studied her. She was nothing like the scared girl I'd once watched from across the bakery. She was steel now, forged in fire she never asked to be thrown into. "Why now?" I asked. Eliza shrugged. "Because I used to think it was enough to just survive her. But surviving isn't living. And maybe this is the only way I get to start." That was all I needed. That night I sent the audio to a journalist I trusted, Jonas, a longtime friend and senior writer at the Denver Voice, an independent outlet known for going after big institutions. Jonas was queer, relentless, and unafraid to burn bridges, especially ones built on moral hypocrisy. I gave no commentary, just a simple message. Let people hear what the camera doesn't show. Within 72 hours, the article went live. Behind the frosting, the real voice of Rachel Haven, complete with a full transcript of the recording, corroborating statements from Eliza published anonymously, and a deep dive into the twisted history of conversion therapy, shame-based parenting, and the weaponization of religion in small-town America. The piece exploded. Twitter lit up. Reddit threads were flooded. Influencers with millions of followers shared quotes from Eliza. "If someone's being forced to betray their faith, it's me, not her. Let Eliza speak in our loves." Louder started trending by dawn. Suddenly, Rachel wasn't the trembling martyr on morning TV anymore. She was the mother who tried to erase her daughter's identity, who spat hate behind closed doors while frosting cupcakes with a fake smile. The tide turned fast. Sponsors dropped out. Haven's Delight lost contracts with 3 corporate clients. Local schools canceled their fundraising orders. LGBT+ organizations called for a boycott, not just of the bakery, but of every business affiliated with Rachel Haven. But the most unexpected part, Eliza. She agreed to go public. I asked her 3 times if she was sure. She never flinched. "I'm not just a daughter," she said. "I'm a witness." We sat side by side on the Progress Hour, a nationally syndicated LGBTQ+ talk show. The set was minimal: 2 chairs, a soft blue background, a single camera. The host, Devin LeClaire, welcomed us with warm eyes and an even warmer voice. "I want to start with the simplest question," he said. "Why now?" I went first. Because I thought staying quiet was the kinder choice. I thought letting Rachel dig her own grave would be enough. But the more she played victim, the more I realized silence is complicity. And I'm done being complicit. Eliza took a breath. Her voice didn't shake. "Because I've been edited out of my own story my whole life. My mom taught me to lie to the world, to myself, to anyone who looked too closely. I'm tired of lying." The audience was silent. No clapping. Just listening. Devin leaned forward. "And what do you hope people take from this?" Eliza's eyes locked onto the camera. "That love isn't shameful. That survival isn't betrayal. And that forgiveness only means something when the truth is finally free." That clip alone hit 1 million views in 3 days. And Rachel, she couldn't outrun it. Reporters surrounded Haven's Delight. When asked about the audio, she only said no comment. When pressed, she muttered, "My daughter is confused," then walked away. But no one believed her anymore. One editorial headline said it best: "From baker to bully, the rise and fall of Rachel Haven." By the end of the week, she'd lost everything. The bakery, the brand, the trust of a community that once saw her as sweet and God-fearing. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt seen. For the first time, my pain wasn't up for debate. Eliza and I shared a quiet moment a few nights later, Sitting on the curb outside Sweet Justice, our new bakery. The neon sign above us glowed soft and pink like cotton candy. She looked at me. You think she'll ever apologize? I thought about it. Maybe, or maybe not. But honestly, I don't need her to. Eliza nodded. Yeah, me neither. And for the first time in years, she smiled without hesitation. 1 week after the interview aired, the final domino fell. Haven's Delight officially closed its doors. The press release said temporary closure due to restructuring. But everyone knew the truth. The empire Rachel had built from butter and Bible verses had collapsed. Suppliers backed out. Customers vanished. Legal threats loomed. The chain unraveled faster than fondant in a heat wave. But this wasn't the end of a bakery. It was the beginning of a revolution. Sweet Justice, our bakery, opened on the first day of Pride Month. We took over one of Haven's former locations on South Pearl Street, remodeled it from the floor up. Gone were the muted neutrals and faux Christian charm. In their place, soft rainbow pastels, hand-painted murals of queer joy, shelves lined with pastries that didn't just look sweet, they meant something. Above the door hung a new sign, Sweet Justice Love. Sugar, no exceptions. On opening day, the line wrapped around the block. We served over 1,200 customers in 10 hours. People brought flowers, letters, old photographs. One older couple, probably in their 60s, held hands as they stepped inside. They showed us a faded Polaroid of their wedding. We were denied a cake in 1987, one of them said. Today we finally get dessert. I nearly cried on the spot. Mom hugged them. Lily snapped a photo. Dad, ever the pragmatist, handed them 2 cupcakes on the house. Eliza ran the front register. Not in the shadows, not in shame. In a fitted black dress, had high eyeliner, fierce, and that sharp little smirk that said I survived. When someone asked if she was the Eliza from the article, she just smiled and said, I'm Eliza from right now. That night after we closed, our team gathered in the upstairs office. The windows glowed from the soft light outside a warm Denver dusk. The air smelled of cinnamon rolls and clean paint. Lily popped champagne. I raised my glass. To everyone who stood beside me. Not for revenge, I said, but for something sweeter, the kind of justice you can taste. Mason kissed me softly on the cheek. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I believed it was over. Until I got a letter. No return address. Just my name handwritten on a pale blue envelope. Inside was a single piece of stationery. The handwriting was familiar. Neat, careful, a little shaky. Sam, I lived my whole life thinking faith meant holding firm. But maybe real faith is learning when to let go. I can't ask you to forgive me, but thank you for not staying silent. RH. I stared at the letter for a long time, not out of anger, not out of pity, but because for the first time I believed she meant it. I folded the letter and slipped it into the drawer where I kept old recipes. Not to revisit, not to reopen wounds, but to remember. To remember that truth isn't always clean, that justice isn't always loud, and that sometimes the most powerful change begins with something as simple as a cake. A month later, Eliza and I were invited onto Good Morning America. The host asked Sam if you could go back to the day Rachel refused your wedding cake, would you do anything differently? I thought about it. Then I said I would have looked her in the eye and said, you don't have to believe in my love, but you will respect it. Eliza nodded beside me. And I'd tell my younger self, hiding in the back room of that bakery, that silence won't save you. Speaking will. The audience applauded. But I didn't smile for them. I smiled for me. Because I'd finally learned the difference between justice and vengeance. And I'd chosen the one with frosting. Final lesson. I used to think justice had to be loud, explosive, dramatic. But sometimes it's made in a mixing bowl, baked at 350, served with a side of truth and a hell of a lot of glitter. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real justice tastes like.